Hey everyone, I'm James Maness and I have a special guest with me tonight. Mr. Gerard Bullock is with us, and we will be tonight holding our February version of our town hall. So appreciate everyone that's taken the time to tune in and see what this is all about. I think some of you have probably watched one of our broadcasts before, so if it's your first time, we'll go through a little agenda here, which is we'll talk about the census, the transportation plan. Also going to work something in about the Mount Juliet Businessman of the Year. And then we'll be talking about pending legislation. And then we'll get into some questions and answers. So if you have any questions for us in this while this is going on, just feel free to drop them in the comments, and we'll do our best to answer them as they come up. If we get so many, we may have to get back to them or something, but we'll do our best to get to what we can. I'm going to try my best. I won't make any promises, but we're going to try to keep this as short and brief as possible. I know everybody out there, since football has ended, is just dying to watch the State of the Union tonight.
Oh, yeah.
So that kicks off at 8. So you get the, City Town Hall, and then you can do the State of the Union and hear about big picture items. So, Gerard, I want to tell everybody about yourself, how you wound up in Mount Juliet, maybe a little brief.
Well, thanks for having me on your town hall. Appreciate it. So I moved to Mount Juliet in 2015. Worked for Under Armour. Under Armour asked me to move to a place called Mount Juliet, Tennessee. And I was
Juliet.
like, exactly, yeah. And pretty much told them I don't know where that is. We're not doing that. But I was sitting in the Hampton Inn in Suites after about my 12th week working here, and was looking out, and then called my wife and was like, hey, look, this place is really nice. I think you should check it out. So she came down on the weekend. She wanted to go to Broadway, do all that stuff, and I said, no, we're going to go to the Target, and we're going to go to Dick's, because we got to be around where we're going to live, and the people, see where we're going to be. And it took us about 12 hours, and next thing you know, moved to Mount Juliet. So,
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that says a lot about a community.
Yeah, pretty much.
You show up, visit, and you want to move here.
Yeah, so.
Now, my title Mount Juliet, before I ever knew where it was in elementary school. My art teacher was from Mount Juliet, Tennessee.
Okay.
And I don't know, when it became time when we selected we want to move to the Nashville area, we just kind of picked it out. Said that's where we want to be. Proximity, close to the airport, and my wife wanted to go into teaching, and wow, I mean, it's a great place for us. And so
yeah, us too.
We locked in and found us a place, and really been here ever since. So, well, the first thing on the agenda tonight is to talk about the census, and that's coming up, and it's an important census because this is the one that occurs every 10 years. So this one will go down as to redistricting. The 4 city commission seats will be redistricted. All of your state house, state senate, federal will be redistricted, of course. But it's particularly important to the city. And one of the things here at the city is a lot of people aren't aware of is we get state funding based on our population. So for everybody out there who answers the census and we grow in population-wise, obviously if you're counting the census, you're already here. Right. So you're not bringing more people in through the census. You're just counting what we got. So for us as a city, we receive $141.80 a year for every person here. It doesn't sound like a lot of money, but if we find 2,500 additional people, more so than we had that are already here, we're bringing in, to the city coffers, and it's not costing anybody any more money. It's already coming from the state. It's just money that's allocated to us as a city. We're bringing in $354,000 annually just by counting the people we have. And that's one of the reasons you'll see Mount Juliet do special census so often is it costs about $30,000 to have a special census. And you can see if we can just find 212 people a year off that special census, we're broke even.
Right.
So for us out there, it's coming up. So just something I wanted to make you aware of, why it's so important to us as a city and why you see it emphasized so much. So it determines how you get represented at Washington, the state, the city, even the county, the school board. All of that falls under the numbers they pull from the census. Now, the other thing I wanted to just briefly touch on is yesterday. Do you know what yesterday was? It was the cutoff for
registration to vote.
Register to vote.
Yeah.
And that election is coming up. for the presidential thing, it's called Super Tuesday. But for Harris County, for the first time ever, we're having a Republican primary. We have several judges up for election, property assessor that's up for election, and those will be done at the primary level. And the winners of the primary, of course, will be in the August ballot. So that's important. But we also have a referendum on the sales tax increase. Our sales tax rate in Mount Juliet is 9.25 cents per dollar. So the referendum is to raise it to 9.75. The county is committed to allocate that money to teachers. My wife is a teacher, just for truth in advertising here, so I'd welcome a raise. I'll put that out there. I'm a little conflicted in that, so
Right.
I always welcome a raise for my wife, but not the reason I bring it up. I bring it up just so that you know it's out there. It's important. You need to make the decision of whether you want that to go to schools or whether it's not to go to schools, but also for the city. The city gets a portion of that increase, or half that increase, the same as Lebanon. Watertown will get a portion of that. And for us as a city, it's an additional, what we believe is going to be an extra $550,000 annually that comes into the city on that if it passes. So I've already admitted that I have a conflict in this since my wife's a teacher. So don't take my voicing of it as pros or cons. Just know it's there. So
Sure.
the other thing is, you had something recently happen with you.
I did.
Surprised your brother?
Yeah, my mother. Yeah. So, yeah.
So you're a member of the Mount Juliet Chamber,
Yes.
and they had their banquet.
They
They
did.
give out some awards. And folks, I am sitting beside the Mount Juliet Businessman of the Year.
Now, so my mom called me and wondered, what I was telling the citizens of Mount Juliet for them to award me such an award. I could barely tie my shoes when I was a kid. But great honor. Like I said, be in this town for almost 5 years now, and just being in the community, working with the chamber, being on the board here at the Chamber of Commerce here at Mount Juliet, and just being able to give back to the community that's been giving so much to myself and my family since the time we've been here. I just want to say, it's been just a great honor.
Yeah, and
Great honor.
And it's a reflection of the effort and the work you put in here in the community, and it shows. I mean, you've been involved. You put your name forward to possibly serving on the commission, and you've done a lot. You've stepped up. I know it's just people I hear around town speak very highly of you. You've got a couple businesses here. He's in real estate, and I just need to know: is it true? Are you the official realtor for Tom Brady or not?
I am not the official. I don't have a buyer's representation agreement signed with him yet, but I'm working on it.
Oh,
we'll get
okay.
that. Yeah.
We're trying to start rumors here first. Now the other thing out here, and Gerard works hard, and he does a great job here in the community, and I just, your whole family, and I mean, you just represent the community so well. But the next thing I wanted to just move into, and I'm trying to move quickly here, is I want to get into our pending legislation that we have coming up. One thing that I put forward and talked about on these town halls before is the email transparency, which is just simply an ordinance that says use your city email, don't use personal email to conduct business on. I think that's going to go down. I think that's going to be defeated. I don't think it'll be voted against, but I think it'll be probably amended in such ways that it'll do more harm than good in a way,
Okay.
by pending text requirements on it, which is going to potentially cost the taxpayers upwards maybe $12,000. So I think what I'm going to do is just probably try to hold off on that to budget time and see where that goes in there. It may be ahead of its time for
Sure.
the city. Now the other one that I have out there is kind of some work that I was going through looking at our ethics laws here in the city, and each municipality in the state is required to have these ethics laws in place. And for ours, one of the things that really jumped out to me is we only have, if somebody does something that's considered unethical in the city, someone only has 30 days to report that, and then it would go to the ethics commission. And I thought, man, that's
Short statute of limitations here.
yes. So I'm not the only one. I was like, 30 days.
Kind of short. It'd probably be 30 days before you even hear about it, right?
I know. I was like, I only got a tricky for 31 days. I'm
Yeah,
scot free.
yeah. Probably find out about 22 days in.
No kidding. I mean, it's like you have the meeting, the press report gets written up, and then it maybe hits the papers maybe that Wednesday, maybe the Wednesday after, and I mean, maybe you don't read it, you hear somebody talk about it. I mean, there's lots of reasons in taking the time to write something. I thought 30 days is just, quite frankly, I thought ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I took it and did some work on it right through the city attorney. And right now we're trying to change that statute of limitations on the reporting to the ethics violations to 5 years.
Okay.
So if it's a blatant, if it's something that's done, and it's like done in a meeting, it's publicly done, and somebody files a complaint, they have a 1-year window to file it. If it's something that's done behind the scenes and it's not publicly out there, you have a 1-year period from the time it's discovered to report it. Now the current legislation, if something is not done publicly, you have a 6-month window on that to do from the time of the. So we'll expand that to a year and then put a 5-year cap on that. And that's going to be something that's going to be on this upcoming agenda at the next meeting for consideration.
Sure.
Because I just 30 days.
That's pretty quick.
I know my kids do things I don't find out for 30 days later. The other thing out there that will be on the next agenda, and I talked about it in the newsletter, and one thing I really noticed was it actually it got picked up on here. If you'll notice, the Lebanon Democrat here did an article on it, and they referenced the story in my newsletter here. So this is just a little plug here for the newsletter. If you haven't subscribed to the newsletter, it's in the meeting details here on it, and some of the stuff that was written about the upcoming transportation plan. We first started working on that transportation plan. I'm getting 15 or 16. I'm not real sure which year it was we worked on that thing. We spent a lot of money as a city to put that forward. And I don't know about you, but one of the complaints I hear around town sometimes about things that go on at the city is planning. And that transportation plan to me was so key. And you may hear people, mention or say, the transportation plan is not that important. But I believe if it wasn't that important, it wouldn't have taken this long to get something unimportant passed. So it's going to bring it back as a resolution on this Monday's agenda to take a look at the transportation plan again and hopefully get it passed this time. It's been out there for several years. It went to the Planning Commission after going through several meetings with the Board of Commissioners, workshops and that. Went to the Planning Commission. It got deferred for 6 months at the Planning Commission. Then it got passed to the Planning Commission, come back to the Board of Commissioners, and then went back through more workshops on this thing. We've spent the money on this thing, and I think everybody watching will agree that one thing that we can improve on is transportation and getting those roads in place, having the plan in place, so when development comes in, there's something to hold them accountable to.
One of the only things I hear is we need the infrastructure before we keep building and things like that. I mean, I think that the planning portion of it and the transportation plan would go hand in hand with that, right?
Agreed. I mean, and you don't just want one-off building going on. You don't want, let's put a road here. The thing about the transportation plan that makes it so powerful is if you develop here, then it has the layout for where things will connect in the future as development's going on. And you'll see a lot of that incorporated in developments now. You'll see roads out there with temporary dead ends on that thing. Yep. That's all tied together with the transportation plan. And that's one of the reasons it's so important to get that and go on record on that and say officially as a city that this is something that we adopt, that this is something that we're going to stamp. And the more fundamental problem to not going through and taking this thing past the goal line is the next time, and I've heard it before, is when somebody brings something up in regards to planning that it's like, well, the last plan, we spent all this money, we spent all this time on this thing, and we never did anything with it. And to me, that's why it's so important to be able to get this one passed, is so the next time something like this comes up, where we're maybe doing a parks overlay plan again, or updating that plan, or when it comes time to update the transportation plan again, that we have the track record of passing them and following through with them. And that's one thing that's really important to me. So I guess at this point we've kind of gone over the majority of the agenda on here, which for me is probably a record to go through everything in about 15 minutes or so.
You have some good stuff on here,
Yeah, it's a lot of things coming together. It's really a year. I see 2020 as an important year for this city. We've we've gone through some struggles in properly funding things, like when it comes to emergency services, and some of that comes down to just priorities, getting those priorities in order. And this is really a key year to try to get those things lined up. So I'm just reviewing this real quickly here. I think we got most of the agenda items on here. So right now I'm going to go over here and look at questions and
From the
comments.
census standpoint, we just make sure that people are
Aware, yeah, it's so important to participate in those things.
participating.
Participation is key. And Ray here made the comment that the census is paying $16.50 an hour for work on the census. So
Sure.
you can count the citizens, help fund the city, and earn money for yourself.
At the same time, there you go.
Tina says we're both newbies.
Yeah, I saw that.
Tina.
Yeah, I don't know. She was the first one on here. Luke's on there.
We're doing good.
Clear and concise.
That's right.
That's how it is.
Yeah, last time we had a lot more questions on it. I tell you what, since we got a little bit of time here, two things.
Sure.
They were going around on Facebook.
Oh,
You know the source of all truth.
we need a Costco.
Yes, we need a Costco. I actually had a conversation with one of the I don't know what you call it, the planners for Costco, and they were telling me, it's like, yeah, Mount Juliet, we get all kinds of email from them, and it was pretty clear that we weren't quite on the radar yet for
Sure.
it. But anyway, it was interesting. They didn't know me from Adam, so it was just interesting getting the clear and unfiltered, unbiased feedback there. So there's that. But the other thing I see coming up on Facebook was Nonneville Road Apartments.
Yeah.
And this one is one that's kind of surprised me when it come back. Not that it's been around before, and this was, as far as the city goes, as far as I know, that property off Nonneville Road is one of the only parcels that in this city that's already zoned for multifamily. And my understanding is it was when it was annexed into the city as part of the neighborhood beside it, it come in as multifamily. So it's been out there. It's one of those things that will be developed as multifamily.
At some point.
And I don't, as far as coming before the Board of Commissioners, it won't even come before the Board of Commissioners for a vote. It'll go through the Planning Commission to be approved. There's some stipulations on it that they'll have to meet, but that's the last parcel I know of in this city that's already pre-approved to come in, and it was just annexed into that way, is my understanding of it. I've had the plans sent over, not the plans so much for the development, but the legislation of when it was adopted on that. And I know what it looks like sometimes to people that they say, anything that comes for the city, it just gets adopted.
Sure.
And just the same, I had a guy approach me about developing an apartment complex right off South Green Hill Road. And usually when something comes up from that, my first question is what's the current zoning here on it? And is that better, or is what I've got? And the zoning I have on it, which was single family, I'm like, no, I'm not giving up single family for apartments here. I mean, it was and it's not trying to just paint a broad brush that all apartments are bad, but at the same time, it was saying this, it's not the place, the road. And I mean, a lot of the things you can say about South Green Hill are going to apply to Nonneville Road to maybe not the same extent, but there is some truth to that there, the infrastructure that needs to be done, and they'll be required to do a lot of that. But there's been other places in there where you've seen stuff come in where, it's on the edge of the city, and the city doesn't have to say yes to these developments in some of these cases. But if the city doesn't take it and annex it, it doesn't stop. And I think that's one thing that sometimes people don't understand. Just city saying no doesn't stop it.
Sure.
It can develop out in the county. And that was one of the things at the last meeting that really, I guess, rubbed me wrong, was when it comes to stuff developing out in the county, we have one down just south of the Providence area that was developing, and the developer was required to do some road improvements. But because the road improvement was in the county refused to allow the improvement. And I don't really know the story behind why it wasn't allowed to do it. But anyway, the developer wound up giving the city $160,000 for the offset of what they would have paid. And that was that's just the difference. You know, if it develops in the city, there's standards, there's things that are going to be applied to it. They're going to have to do infrastructure improvements on this stuff versus letting it develop out in the county.
Right.
And sometimes that weighs into the decision on this thing. My no is not going to stop the project. My no is just saying, no, it won't be done in the city when it can be done in the county. And we saw the same thing play out with Bradshaw Farms. A no there didn't stop a neighborhood. It just would stop it developing in the city. So that was just one of the things I'd noticed. Is there anything you've noticed out in the city or anything that's kind of brought up hot button items or?
No, I mean, one, I think that the transportation plan in general, the need for the planning part would be more transparent to the citizens in the city, just so there's, that there is a plan.
Yes.
And then that there is something that to be followed. I would think that, that would really help to kind of bring some clarity and some transparency to, why some of the things we're doing.
Yeah, I agree. And transparency, why commissioners are doing what they're doing, why we're voting the way we're doing, what may be influencing our votes. All those things are so important to me to get those out there and people to see, why, if we've got business interests or work here or do this or do that, it's just all that needs to be weighed out and be out there. The transportation plan is just it. Something develops, what's beside it, what happens next. I mean, that it shouldn't be something that's decided on second reading, I guess is where I'm
No,
going
and then
with this.
there's also it's out there to be referenced. So, officials in the city can reference the transportation plan and pretty much say, there's no surprises as far
Right.
as, well, are there building apartments over it? Well, it was in the transportation plan. Like you said, it should be more transparent role.
And I got a comment on here. Julie says we need something for kids to do since Cedar Creek is closing.
I agree. I have four myself. So,
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Now, here's one of the things that kind of gets us as a city. We have some of the most stringent design standards for people coming in. And Mount Juliet just has high standards. And sometimes when it comes, and I hear bowling alleys, skating rinks,
trampoline parks.
I'm glad you nailed that because I was struggling with the right word. But those are the ones that are looking here, and they have these buildings with these huge footprints. And if we as a city are requiring them to brick these things,
Four sides brick.
the rent, the lease for that dollar per square foot, that money's got to be recovered, and this just puts it outside the budget for a lot of these things out there. And we've got some people interested in coming into the city. One of the things, and I'm gonna get in trouble for throwing this out there, but I'm gonna do it anyway. One of the things that I've been talking to the city manager about is establishing an entertainment district.
Okay.
Something where we can, and this is all conceptual, just something so we can attract something in there where we can do something nice. But I think a good example of that would be like when we remodeled City Hall out there. We put brick out there, the brick that was used on City Hall. If you opened a business, the city wouldn't let you do it.
Right. I'd have to use regular,
You'd have to use brick.
Brick, not the, what is it? The
We call it lick and stick.
Yeah, I know what it is. Yeah.
You couldn't do that.
Right.
But if we could get an entertainment district on that, we could come up with some standards out there that look nice, but be able to do something for it. And I know it gets into all these discussions. We got government picking the winners and losers on these things, but that's not the goal. But at the same time, we do need something for our kids to do out there, and we do need these types of entertainments. And this can be kind of the seed for something else coming in.
Sure, because if you look in like other cities where they have the trampoline parks, the skating rinks, and things like that, they're usually outside the city or they're in an industrial zone because the retail space is too expensive. So typically it goes into an industrial type building outside the city limits or in an industrial park where it's a little bit more cheaper for the owner to do that.
I got and you're right. I mean, that's what happens.
Typically.
And Mount Juliet just has very limited space in that area as far as industrial drawing. We got, what is an update on South Mount Juliet Road improvements at I-40? Purchasing right away and is the next steps on that thing, and hope to start construction on that around the summer on the widening of the bridge. And that's been a bottleneck.
I live in Providence.
And I used to live right there too.
I would say, I mean, I live over there, it gets backed up, but I mean, I'm quite honestly, maybe it's just where I usually travel it could be a lot worse. But let's don't let it get that. But let's not let it get there.
And that's another thing. It's like some people say, why is it designed like that? Why is it done that way? And it originally wasn't even designed to have the 2 lanes there to turn left to go west on I-40.
I just make sure I cut the person off before I get to the double four. Yeah,
Good plan.
I just do that early. No, I don't do that. Sorry to that person on my way here today.
No, it's yeah, it is. I mean, you got 2 lanes that go down. You got it bottlenecks into one unless you're going to get on the interstate there.
Sure.
And it really creates a problem. It's something we've known about. It's actually something that the city is not really dependent so much on outside funding on that thing. It's one of them that we've taken on because it's so important to the city to have that north-south connector go through there and have that taken care of as soon as possible. And these projects, they just take time, and I don't know any other way to say it. We've got great help at the state level with Representative Lynn, and I think she's represented the city so well on these projects. And the money with the Improve Act, the stuff that's recently happened, is there now for a lot of these projects. But a lot of them for us, and you have to back up a few years to where we started adding additional engineers at the city level to take on some of this workload. Because I think the December newsletter I was laying out the timeline on some of these, it's like environmental study, approval of your environmental studies, and then some of that would go off to these various 3-letter organizations. And I started asking, what are these things? And some of it goes back to native groups into the state where they got sign-off rights on that to make sure that it's not intruding on burial grounds or various things. Those can park there for a little while, and they go on to the next one in the state. And then you got utilities that have to weigh in, then you got to purchase right away. And all these things just take an incredible amount of time. And then if you're the city, and like with a lot of these projects that we're doing with state roads, the city's paying for 20% of it. But the cost of getting the 80% on this sometimes is the time it takes to get the project through, because there's so many more requirements when you go through federal agencies or even state agencies to some degree. But most of that's with the federal money tied onto it. And a lot of times, just one of these projects would exceed the entire annual budget of the city. So you look at trying to tie those in with those federal funds and state funds in order to get them done. And fortunately, it takes longer to get through the process is the downside to it. Brittany says, well, thank you for well, you're welcome.
Thanks, Brittany.
No questions yet. I just got connected. All right. Just trying to make sure we haven't missed anybody. This is a great idea.
Transportation.
Events at Charlie Daniels Parks are great, but it fills up so quickly. Yes, that is true. Judy's talking about Charlie Daniels Park filling up so quickly.
Right. Entertainment district we're talking about?
Mm-hmm. And the entertainment district sounds good. I mean, we recently, I say recently, it's been a few years ago now, but we passed a resolution to try to purchase an additional 100 acres of parkland on that thing. But probably better than a lot of us out there, is property values in Mount Juliet are just through the roof.
It's not cheap.
And finding those areas that we can put them out there is been a struggle. And there's some out there, and there may be some updates coming on this pretty quickly. I think there's some things to go, and then there's probably some other drivers. It's election year. I mean, people want to get out there and announce parkland. So
right,
always motivates people. I'm not up for election, but it's out there.
Yeah, it's out there for sure.
Yes, and that's true. Pump It Up is shutting down too. When will Clemens Road be fixed? Clemens Road, yeah, that one's. We haven't taken in. I don't think the city has all of Clemens Road, but we've got the vast majority of it, Keith, and I really have to find out the timeline on that. It needs some work. I know there's nobody going to be doing any work on it until the utility work's done, but Clemens Road is definitely in need, and you're right, Keith. It needs some work. I drive it more than I care to admit, but it's on the way to a lot of things. It's a connector for the high school. There's
Golden Bear.
There's Golden Bear, and we got the nice Greenway coming out there too by Jackson Hills, and I love to get out and walk on that. Looking forward to seeing that expanded too, but I don't know the exact dates, Keith, and it may have been in this year's it may be in this year's paving budget, but I asked about it. I was told it's in the budget. I didn't look. I know it's coming up. Springtime's coming, and we'll start the repavings process on this. And it may be in there, Keith. I don't know off the top of my head, though. But you are right. That road does need some work.
Ball fields.
Yes, and Cassie, I see your comment there. All those things you mentioned are true. Some of those are through private organizations. Some of them, you know, with Charlie Daniels Park, it's just busting at the seams with what we got out there too. And I know some talk about getting swimming pools,
Right.
the
I read
aquatic
that.
center, all that work going on that. And that was one of the things that came up when it was being addressed or presented to the Board of Commissioners. Is like, well, where are you going to put this thing? And of course, the Parks Director was pushing towards putting it in Charlie Daniels Park. And there's a lot of reasons you would put it there because that's where the Parks Department's based out of. That's where the people already are. It makes sense from that, but it cuts down on some of the parking too.
Sure.
It takes away some of the fields, so we need places to replace those things. I think right now there's probably about two or three areas in the city that are looking to be targeted. It's just a question on someone's willing to sell at the right price. The Board of Commissioners is in a good mood that day, and
Couple days in a row.
yes, a couple of meetings in a row and pushes the ball across the finish line. And I do not have a date on any of those things, but I know there's definite interest in getting it done.
Yeah. Ever since I've been here, it's all I hear. And then especially on the ball fields and the soccer portion, I know some people were talking about that and trying to identify the land for that.
Yeah, it's true, and I mean, we've got other cities that really outpace us on it. Things like that for recreational areas. As far as now, we're at the same time got advantages other cities don't. We are the city between two lakes, so you know, God put two swimming pools, one on the north side and one on the south side for us. But those aren't really in the city for the most part. Some of Cedar Creek and stuff is, but for the most part of that, those aren't city added values. We've got, and you know, along the same lines, Long Hunter State Park is there. But as a city for providing space for our citizens to use athletic fields and stuff like that, I'd say we're well underserved for comparable cities. Is there a facility comparable to Jimmy Floyd on the radar? No, there really isn't. That's the honest answer. There is an aquatic center being discussed, but it's not on the. I don't think anybody has the vision at this point to similar to Jimmy Floyd. I know one thing that was discussed was not having the outdoor pool that Jimmy Floyd has, just simply because, you know, there's cost to maintaining that, and you only have so many months out of the year that you can operate that. And a lot of the neighborhoods out here with subdivisions already have it. People are already paying through those through subdivision. I'm sorry if your subdivision doesn't have one, but that's some of the thinking behind that. And having the indoor pool will be operational all day. Now there's tons of questions out there that I don't know the answers to on that, like cost, how you going to pay for it, how do you man it, all those things are just out there. It's purely conceptual at this point, and it's a city, and I mean we're a city that was founded in 1972, and really you saw the sewer system come in, you know, several years after that, and it's just been a steady boom. And then when Liquor by the Drink passed, and that really let Providence take off, and it's been some of the things that you've had other cities build out over 50 years, 100 years or something. You know, Mount Juliet's
short amount of time.
still catching up on those things. And for us, you know, the land prices on those things outpaced us before we could move on them or even had the options or ability to move. I think we've got everything answered. Keith Clemens Road bugs me that I don't know the answer to that one.
Or when it's going to get fixed.
Yes. It is a rough stretch. I'm just circling through here, making sure we didn't miss anything.
Census stuff.
Yeah, census job, 1650, it's still there.
So the takeaway for today is participate in the census.
Participate in the census.
Yeah.
if you won't get a job with the census,
Yep. And count.
be nice.
There you go.
We get here together and we're creating jobs maybe.
That quick.
What elected official wouldn't try to take credit for jobs?
Hey, especially this year, right?
Yeah, you're not kidding. And again, if you joined us, we got the March elections coming up with the referendum on there for the sales tax increase. And right now it's at 9.25. And so for every dollar you spend, 9 cents and a quarter of a cent goes to sales tax. And of course, 7 cents of that goes to the state. Mm-hmm. And then the other 2 and a quarter gets split between the school system and the municipality. Or if it's outside the municipality, the county gets it. So on the referendum is a half-cent increase. If you want to vote for it, like I said earlier, full disclosure, my wife is a teacher, and if she gets a raise, I will gladly help her spend it.
And also, it seems like we know exactly what we're trying to, where it is, and where it's going to go to, and we could probably have a say in that by voting yes or no on that.
You definitely, you're definitely right on the county side. They've earmarked that money already. I don't know of any of the municipalities that have come out to earmark it for the city of Mount Juliet. That money is it's going to go into the general fund where our property taxes go now. I'm sorry, not property taxes. Our sales taxes go now. Property taxes still earmarked for fire, but it go into the general fund, and then of course people, can weigh in on that as to where it's going. But I mean, there's really, I don't think, a big secret where that money ultimately winds up to, since the city is committed to $40 million worth of transportation improvements over the next few years, and that's on roughly about a $20 million operating budget. And we can do that because we've got nice cash reserves as a city from just simply spending less than we take in on these budgets to help fund these projects when they come along. And that's not all due at once. That's going to be payable over years to come, but that's the framework that we're laying. Well, I think we're caught up with everything.
Somebody else jumped on there, I think. No.
Yep. Yeah, I know David had asked me about the apartments on Nonneville Road. It's one of the questions he asked, and I don't know if you caught my explanation on that, David, but those apartments out there won't come before the Board of Commissioners to vote one way or the other on it, since it was already, the base zoning is already in place for those apartments. Those apartments will go straight to the Planning Commission. So in a sense, it's not a vote by the Board of Commissioners to approve or unapprove those apartments. By zoning, they have the land rights to develop those on it.
Right.
And I know that's not the answer most people want to hear, but when it was annexed into the city, those apartments on there, and we still potentially have an ability to weigh in on some of those improvements and stuff come before us, and any deviations from what's already planned out there on that stuff, we'll have to come back to the Board of Commissioners. Isn't this year, and Jason asked, isn't this year the 10-year urban growth boundary update? It might be. I don't know, Jason.
Or I guess with regards to the census.
Yeah, and of course the census would weigh into the urban growth boundary. Some of you may be wondering, what is an urban growth boundary? Well, if you know, I think everybody understands that there's just a line drawn on a map, like my little line drawer. There's a line drawn on the map here, and this is, you're either inside the city or you're outside the city. If you're outside the city, you're in the county, or you're maybe in a neighboring city. But around the city limits of Mount Juliet is what's called the urban growth boundary. And the urban growth boundary is lines that are worked on with the other municipalities, Lebanon, Watertown, and the county of Mount Juliet. They all get together and they drop these urban growth boundaries. The city of Mount Juliet cannot annex outside the urban growth boundary without getting it first amended or something. So that's kind of dictated. It's kind of to control the growth of how the municipalities, so you don't have Lebanon and Mount Juliet trying to grab the same parcel of land, or I don't know what would happen if that did, but the urban growth boundary prevents that. It's all captured in state law how that plays out, but it was updated a few years ago. And Jason, you may be right. It may be time to relook at the urban growth boundary. I know here in the neighborhood I live in, we had about 4 or 5 houses that were in Davidson County, and it's just the way the neighborhood got laid out. And we went to the state, and the state actually moved the county line over so these people could attend Wilson County schools, because Davidson County wouldn't come into the neighborhood to pick up the kids, had to walk through the woods to get on the bus. Right. This created all kinds of problems for police, emergency services. So we got the county line moved, but nobody thought to move the urban growth boundary line. So now they're in Wilson County, they can go to school. So they're happy, but they can't be annexed into the city if they choose to be, because they're outside the urban growth boundary. Yet their neighbors right beside them, Mount Juliet.
Yeah.
And you know, it's examples like that. Stuff like that just comes up and comes up and comes up, and it creates confusion sometimes when it comes to emergency services, who serves what. Also, said David's got a question on the new fire station. Will this fire station only service property in the city? Yes, that's the plan right now. It'll be a Mount Juliet fire station up there. We approved the architect at the last Board of Commissioners to design this thing. We're probably several months out from actually nailing down a design on this thing, but we've got secured the land. This will bring up the next discussion as to how we will staff it and fund it. So
sure.
It'll probably be a continuation of last year's
the budget
last year.
Debate. Yeah.
I thought about getting some Band-Aids made with the fire department logo on it, and so like
put it right there.
Just put a Band-Aid on it instead of actually fixing the problem.
A whole bunch of Band-Aids.
Jesus says, my first time joining. Is this a monthly town hall, or do you do this more frequently? We did the last one about 3 weeks ago, and the one before that didn't do one in December. I think everybody was more looking for Santa than they were me.
I guess when you have things, agenda items to go over.
The goal, Julie, probably going forward is to try to do this monthly, if not more, like you said, when things come on. I do it a lot of events that are where I just get on here and just give basically a little speech about updates on what's going on. I did a lot last year on the budget. You can see all of those things. I did get the whole discussion on the budget. My outrage over the layoffs at the fire department. Yep. You can see all those videos.
It's all in the news too. Yeah, that's right.
You can see all those videos. It's on the website under posts, so you can see all of that there. And anything I post or record usually goes right back up to the website for people to view. David says there's a lot of people in the county near this new station. You're exactly right, David. It's kind of a rehash from going back in 2011, 2012, trying to get county fire service. And the original goal back when fire service was in discussion was trying to get WEMA and the county, to the city to contribute more money to get better coverage. But we were at a point at that time by 2011, well, the city had grown multiple times over. We still had the same service that we had when it started, the original agreement back in 1986.
Sure.
And we went from a city of maybe 5,000, now we're at 25,000 at that point with the same service.
The same services.
So long story short, we went to county, various offerings and trying to work through it. And they responded with resolution 1176, which, the paraphrase is it basically says if City of Mount Juliet does anything to improve fire service, the county will withdraw service from the City of Mount Juliet. They never withdrawn service, but at that point, it was kind of, we still tried some other things to get kind of a joint venture going in fire service or to continue the contract that we had, but it's just fallen short. There's options out there with fire tax districts where you could have, just draw a line off on the map, people contribute to fire service. And quite frankly, it just makes sense. I mean, if you're in the county and you're 100 feet away from that fire station,
sure.
I mean, who wants to wait for your service to come from 3 miles away?
You don't want people waiting on service.
It's not that they wouldn't go if they knew about it, but they don't get dispatched because when you call into 911, they transfer the call to where you go. And so unless somebody just catches it or gets called out, it's really a very inefficient system. And, I don't know. I think it took years off my life just then trying to go through it. But fast forward to that, we were just kind of at a sticking point to where we just as a city is like, if you don't want to service us, we'll go with our own thing. And we did in fact do that and started the Mount Juliet Fire Department back up in 2013 because a lot of people don't know the city had a volunteer fire service going back in the 80s and we disbanded our service at the request of the county for WEMA to cover it at the time. And it's just history, and it's a growing city, and you know, right now we're still got a fire department. Our whole department is still the size of one shift in Lebanon.
Sure.
So we've got a long ways to go on this. This new station is definitely going to go a long ways to trying to remedy that. And then Commissioner Bruce says the county Women's Station 4, that's the station outside of Lakeville, will serve the county area. The annex is planned for the new station and will serve both the county. That's true. The ambulance service from WEMA does serve both the county and the city. So, well, we're at 7:16, so we've been going about 45 minutes.
We're going strong.
Yeah. Well, Gerard, thank you for taking the time to
Thank you for having me on
be
here.
here. I don't always get the Businessman of the Year for Mount
come
Juliet.
Come on.
No, well deserved, and I appreciate what you do for the community. I know your family, and you've got your business. Your wife's got her business here, and you're just key to what goes on and makes this city. Your family, I know your son. I see the videos. I mean, he's just knocking it out there. Your whole family.
We just got to get him to sign a paper to go somewhere. That's it, at this point.
Titans player of the.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's wow. He's got something I never had, which was talent.
Who was that? Oh, that boy.
Yes.
Yeah, not me. Well, no, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you taking the time to be here. And if I don't think I've missed anything, I'll check one last time. But I'll thank everybody for watching. You know, if you follow the page, we put information out quite regularly as about what we got planned, what I've got. I try to update people as to when the meetings are. If you haven't subscribed to the newsletter, it's here in the description to sign up, send out information, try to get it out monthly to people so know what's going on, what's coming down the pike, so to say, as we as a city move ahead on some stuff. So follow the page, sign up for the newsletter, and of course, thank you again so much for joining. Thank you everyone for watching. We'll have the recording posted on the website soon.
All right. Have a good night.
Thanks everyone.